that's what it's like being in the center of the Jewish world where you're trying to balance modernity and tradition. And I commend Hadar for stepping confidently into that mission and holding. Shalom friends, and welcome back to A Small Sanctuary. And today I am going to do a review. It's time for a review. And the product I want to review is a Parshanut, a Torah Portion study aid for families with kids. It's published by Hadar, the Traditional Egalitarian Learning Institute in New York, and it's called Devash. Now, my family and I have been using Devash throughout the cycle of last year, and we've just started the new cycle for this year for 5783 after Simchat Torah and with the start of Parshat Bereshit, the Torah portion of Genesis, taking us right back to the beginning. What prompted me to use this resource and how did I find out about it? I found out about it through social media, interestingly enough, through the Hadar website, through the Hadar podcasts, and I will leave those resources below because Hadar is a wonderful resource for higher Jewish learning and I cannot highly recommend them enough. Let me now talk a little bit about why I decided to use this. Frankly, in the non-Orthodox world, in the gender egalitarian world, or the Jewish world where we accept the insights of modern science and biblical scholarship, while combining it with devotion and adherence to the practices of Judaism, it was pretty hard to find a Torah portion study resource for families with kids. There are loads of Torah commentaries and Parshanut resources for adults, for grown-ups, for adult learners, but very few for kids. And if they do exist, they tend to come out of the Orthodox world. I think Orthodox resources are great and can be really helpful, and I have Orthodox resources too. But I also value a way of studying Torah that reinforces the Jewish values that my family holds with regards to gender inclusivity, participation of women and girls and people of all genders on equal footing with men. I was delighted when this resource came out and you sign up to it digitally, and in exchange for a donation, and you can set your donation level as you wish, you get sent these packages to your house, and they come in about monthly installments of 4 packages each, and I will show you what they look like in a minute. You can also do it entirely digitally on your iPad or your device, or just print them out at home, and in that case you can just download from the back catalog of last year. Now, last year, me and my 9-year-old son and 7-year-old daughter, 8 and 6 when we started, went through the whole cycle. We didn't do it consistently, but we did it pretty consistently. I would say we did about 75% of the Torah portions throughout the calendar year, and it was an amazing journey of learning through the entire text. Let me show you what it looks like. So I have collated them in a big old whopping folder, and you really need a very thick folder. It adds up and it is heavy, as you can tell. I basically bought dividers, you know, in a group of 5. How convenient, 5 books of the Torah, and here you go, 5 dividers. There were also some extra sheets that came in for Jewish festivals, and I put them at the front. You don't have to put them at the front, that's just what I did. So there is stuff on Purim, on Pesach, on Tisha B'Av, on Sukkot. You get this in weekly installments, and this is what it looks like. It's very colorful, it's beautifully designed, it's very intuitive in terms of using it, etc. Let me just grab one, pop this open, and show you what we've got. This is Shabbat, the book of Exodus. It gives you an overview in the Parshah of what happens in the Parshah. I will talk more about how I use this and how I recommend people use this but this is already a useful resource to have. Then it splits up into various topics and themes. You have Midrash, the Midrash section. That will bring in Midrashic commentaries, aka rabbinic legends and homiletical interpretations. And it will take a verse, it will focus on a quote-unquote problem in the verse, or something that prompts further exploration, and then dig deeper. The next session is called Parshanut commentary, and it brings in these different rabbinic thinkers, Rashi and Hadar in this case. This is really cool because it basically shows you these rabbis that kind of become our friends on the page all throughout the ages, from the rabbis of the Talmud right down to rabbis from 100 years ago or 200 years ago. So they will bring in their interpretations too, and it's often a contrasting interpretation. So we'll teach your child something about machloket, about sacred disagreement. The third section is called halacha, and this deals with Jewish law. I have to be transparent. Hadar seeks to be a halachic movement. That is its mission. It wants to create a halachic framework for sacred Jewish living. So it's going to give you halachic answers. If you are non-halachic or post-halachic, just keep that in mind. It's going to give you a fairly traditional answer. There are more sections. Rega shel Ivrit, a moment of Hebrew. Mazeh, what is going on here? And even a Parsha scavenger hunt, where if you read through the actual portion in your Chumash, in your Bible, you can hunt for things, and that is pretty high level. And then there is Kriyat HaTorah, looking at the trope marks, the significance of certain cantillation marks and melodies. Then there is a 1-minute debate, and join the conversation. And then it will give you the answers to some of the questions in the back. This definitely builds. It starts pretty simple, and then with each section it gets a little more complicated and a little more abstract, and presumably a little more suitable for older children. Hadar builds this for children in between 7 and 11 years old. The artwork is beautiful. The artwork has changed a little bit. It's very whimsical and very, very beautiful and enchanting. This is Parshat Breshit, Genesis, and this is Parshat Noach. And you will see all kinds of beautiful illustrations. Please note, this resource seeks to be inclusive and does really well on representation. And I definitely would love to hear your comments, whether you think it is representative enough, but I think there is a consciousness about representation and diversity that is very heartfelt. Let's get to the review part. What do I think of this resource? And do I recommend it? Overall, I really love this resource. It's an excellent resource. It is beautifully done. It's done with heart. It's done with intelligence. I do have a few caveats. They're not criticisms exactly, but caveats in terms of the audience that they have designed this for. For my family, this resource is pretty great. We are a rabbinic family. We're educated Jews. We have no problem accessing the deeper ideas in the text. And in fact, I learned from this myself. I learned about commentaries I didn't know about, or Midrashim I didn't know about, and I'm really valuing it. However, the choices that are sometimes made by the editors to include certain Midrashim or to emphasize certain aspects of the Parshah are not always intuitive, especially for beginning learners. Sometimes it can be a little bit obscure. Now, I am not saying that that's a bad thing per se. Maybe if you've been through the Torah portion year after year after year after year, and you're familiar with the more common explanations and interpretations, you will relish the opportunity to take a new look at things, an original angle or an unexpected angle. But if you're a beginning learner, it might be a little bit challenging, and you might find yourself wondering why did they make that choice. Furthermore, I would say, It's built towards children 7 to 11. I think that is a little bit misleading. This is clearly, as we would say in Hebrew, gavoa, quite high levels of learning. My middle child was 6, 7 when we started this, and she struggled in the beginning. But as we continued, she really started getting more and more and more. And as her mind was being trained in this methodology, she really started to come to it and offering great insights. But it's definitely a floor and not a ceiling. I also want to say that this age designation is a little bit misleading for another reason. This resource is great for adult learners and teenage learners too. I would not want to use 11 as a cutoff point. This is a great resource for people entering Jewish learning as adults, for mitzvah students, for introduction to Judaism students. All of these groups will be well served by this. Will adult learners benefit from this resource? If you approach it with a little bit of grace, I would say yes. It is, of course, child-oriented, but the commentaries and interpretations are so good that they are kind of timeless. You do need to realize what you're stepping into. This is not a resource that will hold your hand. This is a resource that you have to come at with a fair bit of curiosity and open-heartedness, and the willingness to sometimes not understand things or try to work them out or go back to them another time. And that is really okay. It doesn't regurgitate things for you. This is really the kind of learning that a well-rounded Jewish child would do in preparation for the lifelong learning that that Jewish child would do once they grow into a Jewish adult. So it isn't casual in that way, but it is very useful and really quite profound. This is also the beauty of this resource. While we are now in cycle 2, cycle 1 is still amazing. And you can revisit this cycle year after year after year and just penetrate deeper towards the back pages of each booklet. So this is a resource definitely worth investing in, and it will be a treasure in your family's Judaica library and learning arsenal. All in all, I love this resource, and I am so grateful to Hadar for including it, for creating it, for bringing it to the attention of Jewish learners in the English-speaking Jewish world, and it has really enriched my family's home learning life. How do we use this? On Shabbat afternoon, after I return from the synagogue, having led services, we have lunch, and then we settle in later in the afternoon with our Devash, Parshanut, and a cup of tea, and we learn this text. And sometimes it's only for 15 minutes, and sometimes it's for an hour, and that is really okay. It has become part of our Shabbat rhythm. I also highly recommend this resource for mitzvah children, to give them something bright and colorful and beautiful. They might find some of the examples a little bit childish, but that's okay. I think you can work through it. And I also think this would delight many adult learners. If you're trying to explore Parshanut, weekly Torah Portion study, and you don't really know where to begin, I highly recommend this. So all in all, I give this a 9.5 out of 10. It can be a little obscure. It definitely speaks to a certain community with a very specific mission, that of traditional, egalitarian, halachic Judaism. If you come from a strong Reform or Reconstructionist background, you might find some of the interpretations a little bit too traditional. And if you come from an Orthodox background, you might find some of the interpretations a little bit too liberal. You know, that's what it's like being in the center of the Jewish world, where you're trying to balance modernity and tradition. And I commend Hadar for stepping confidently into that mission and holding on to that mission, and really designing workable, useful materials for young families to strengthen their Jewish learning, Jewish practice, and Jewish spirituality in the home. Thank you for watching. If you like this kind of content, please do not forget to hit that like button, ring the notification bell, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment. Share the love. What Jewish resources for families and children do you use? Which ones are you passionate about? How do you foster a culture of Jewish learning, of Yahadut, of Limud, of Talmud Torah, of Jewishness, of learning, of Torah study in your home? I can't wait to hear all about it. Shalom uvracha, with peace and blessing from my bayit, from my house to your bayit. Thank you. Bye.